not in my house.
Welcome back, folks. You're obviously here because you're listening, and we are at number 60 to 41 on the Bleacher Report's Top 100. My name's Eric. I'm with my buddy Zach. Zach, say hi.
What's up, everyone?
All right, we are really excited to give you this next set of players on this list because there's some head scratchers, there's some reallys, and there's actually some ones that make us think in terms of like, where would you put this guy? You know, where we actually have to think about it. So starting off the list at number 60 is Tony Parker. And Zach forewarned me that he's going to have a lot of fun with this actual one. So I'm just going to say I think this is a perfect spot for him, and probably the first time I can agree with the spot on this list so far for the most part. I think he's the glue of the Spurs teams for all those years. Didn't he marry Halle Berry? Or was he dated her or something? Does he get points for that? I'd give him points for that.
I don't remember the Halle Berry one.
Who was the one? He dated somebody really hot.
I'll get to that.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, this is gonna be good. Okay, so he's a career 17.3 rebounds, 6 assist guy. His best season was 22, 3.7 rebounds, and 7.7 assists. He's got the hardware, obviously. I think he's a great player. I think he belongs, and like I said, I think he's at 60. But I am not going to waste any more time on this. Further ado, take it away, Zach.
Yeah, I'm not mad with this pick at all. Tony Parker, he's awesome. He deserves to be on this list. 60 is a good spot. He's got the 4 titles and the Finals MVP, 6-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA. I'm just not feeling it over Tommy Heinsohn. And Bleacher Report pisses me off so bad when they say, let's play the playoff comparison game with Tommy Heinsohn and Tony Parker. Let's not. There's 2 different eras. They're 2 different positions. You can't possibly compare that. It's absolutely absurd to think that you can compare their playoff numbers. It's fucking ridiculous, and I hate that they do that. And look, Bleacher Report praises Parker for being an unselfish player and not putting up big numbers with stars, but then they shit on Tommy Heinsohn for not putting up big numbers and for playing with big stars. So I just want to know what they were thinking when they ranked these 2 right next to each other, saying that. And look, you can't compare these 2 from 2 different eras. And if you want to talk about finals matches, I would love to do so. Tommy Heinsohn, 3 to 4 times he met the Hawks with Bob Pettit, Macaulay, and Cliff Hagan in the finals. 4 times against Elgin Baylor, Vern Mickelson, and Rudy LaRusso. And then he sees Tom Sherry, Nate Thurman, and Wilt in all of his finals appearances. Night in and night out, Tommy Heinsohn had tough matches. He's assigned to all those guys, and he still put up big numbers. So even if his numbers aren't, given Bleacher Report a hard one, they're still good, and he went up against those guys. Tony Parker went up against fucking Daniel Gibson, Mario Chalmers. I mean, I know he went up against Kidd and Billups, but, I mean, you can't possibly tell me that Tommy Heinsohn had an easy route or that you can possibly compare those guys when Parker clearly had a little bit of an easier time.
Well, you're doing a power forward to a shooting guard.
Yeah, exactly.
Point guard.
In a different era.
This makes no sense.
In a different era where the games played at a much faster pace in the 50s where, people are throwing up fucking sweeping hook shots from the corner. Like, no, you can't possibly compare that. And look, going back to Parker, just to get back on topic here, he's great. He deserves to be here. MVP of Euro basketball, 2-time FIBA Eurobasket top scorer, 2-time Eurobasket player of the year. And I think that's the year where he was involved with that Drake and Chris Brown scuffle where he got a Ciroc bottle split over his head and his eye was cut open. He had to wear those shitty goggles, I think. And I mean, he still put up big numbers there. So I mean, he's absolutely great. And I mean, Bleacher Report also praises Parker for being a great leader in the locker room, and I think Brent Berry might disagree with that since he slept with his wife and cheated on Eva Longoria.
Eva Longoria, that's who it was.
Yeah, but I agree with the placing here, but to make all these points to put him over Heinsohn is just hysterical to me, and I could totally debate that. So.
And you did, and you debated it really well, actually. And I think that's one of the ridiculous things is how do you take a point guard and put them up against a power forward? It makes no sense. If you know anything about basketball, you're not comparing those two guys. The only way you can do is comparing like heart, you know what I mean, or team, how you are as a teammate. But like you can't compare numbers. It's ridiculous. We're going to 59 Dave Cowens. Every time you hear people talk about Dave Cowens' play, you always hear the words hustle. Falling on the floor, diving for basketballs, tough guy, rebounding, played tough. This is kind of how I wish the NBA was nowadays. He averaged 13.6 boards a game for his career, which that alone by itself is super impressive. He definitely belongs on this list. All NBA 3 times for defense. The numbers aren't going to show you maybe they are. 17 points and 13 rebounds for his career. That's pretty impressive. And his ultimate season, 20 points, 16 boards, 5 assists, which to me is very impressive for a big dude. 1.3 steals and 1.3 blocks.
Yeah, and shockingly, the Celtics weren't going to draft this guy, and Bill Russell is the one that advised Boston to draft him. A lot of people thought he'd be too small to play center because he's a little undersized, and Russell said, no one's going to tell this dude that he's too small. And that just shows how tough he was. He was a really tough player. He was a bruiser, man, and he's got 2 championships with Boston. He's got the All-Stars. He's a Rookie of the Year. I don't put him over Tommy Heinsohn, though. I just don't, especially in the 70s where is a little bit of a weaker era in the ABA. Again, I don't like to compare eras, but I just feel like Heinsohn had so much more to overcome than Cowens did. So I don't put him over Heinsohn, but he definitely deserves to be here. And 31 rebounds against LSU in college is second highest all time. He did it all levels, not just the NBA.
Nice. Yeah, and I agree with you. I really do. He's... it's kind of funny because going to number 58, we have another Celtic back to back. Look at that Bleacher Report. We got the big chief, Robert Parrish. Patrolled the middle, played forever in the NBA. Vince Carter's going to take that crown from him, but man, he played. I still think he's on somebody's roster right now, to be honest with you.
Because he smokes so much weed.
Did he really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. His numbers don't show it as much if you look at his career numbers and whatnot. But like going back to that, we talked about that before. The numbers aren't going to totally be there because if you're playing your last 7 seasons as a bench guy grabbing 10, 15 minutes a game, your numbers are obviously going to drop. His ultimate season is a really impressive one, 20 points per game, 12.5 rebounds per game, 2 assists, 1.3 steals, and 2.9 blocks, which is essentially 3 blocks. That's very impressive. Played on those great Celtic teams. I can't keep track of all the teams he played with after the Celtics, so it seemed like every year he was on a different team. I actually think he was on a Bulls team that won a title with Jordan.
Yeah, that was his last year.
From what I remember. Epic battles with Kareem. That was more towards the end of his career, but, he was amazing. And think about the numbers he put up with when you had Bird and McHale also grabbing a lot of those rebounds too. You could see it's amazing. It's amazing the numbers he put up with everything else he had around him. He definitely belongs on this list. And I almost kind of think that's kind of a good spot for him. Maybe 5 down. Maybe he's in the 60s in mine, but it's because there's a lot of great centers on this list. So I'd say 58, 60, 65, somewhere is where I'd put him.
Yeah, he totally deserves to be here. It's a good spot for him. A lot of people might argue this. I know that there's a lot of Celtic haters out there. A lot of people might think that he just won because of Larry Bird or whatever. And then they say, oh, well, he just got that last ring with Michael Jordan sitting the bench. He's also got a gold medal, though. And so he did win outside of that. And then when he's playing at Centenary, they were banned from the NCAA because of eligibility rules. So, like, none of those stats show up. He's known as, like, the invisible band because nothing can show up because it technically doesn't count because they're banned. But, they were top 20. They're a top 20 team in college, and Parrish was leading the way at a small conference. Like, that guy knows how to win, and it showed with those Celtics teams. He's clearly their enforcer. One of my favorite things is when the Pistons were just messing with Bird and comes down and just hammers Lambeer in the face and just like he just didn't take shit from no one, and that's important on teams. Like he was so valuable to them. They don't win those titles without him.
I agree 100%. Bob Lanier is 57. I think this is where Bleacher Report is starting to get it right, and during this little stretch that we're in right here. It won't last long, folks, I promise you, but right now the stretch is kind of making sense. He's a career 2010 guy, and you know what that means for me. That's instant access on my list, at least. Play with Kareem, still put up those numbers, which to me is very impressive. He definitely makes my list for sure.
He makes mine. I kind of disagree with the placing, though, and I don't put him over McAdoo or Willis Reed. I just don't.
Neither one of those made that list. We're just emphasizing that again because it needs to be emphasized like 600 times during these podcasts.
Yeah, in case you're joining us late. But I mean, he's an 8-time All-Star. Look, if you want to compare Willis to Lanier, Willis has 2 titles, all right, and 2 Finals MVP. Lanier has 0. Willis has 7 All-Stars. Bob 8. Willis, 1 season MVP. Bob 0. Willis has 5 All-NBA teams. Bob 0. Defensive teams, Willis 1. Bob 0. Willis is a Rookie of the Year. Bob wasn't. Bob averaged 20 and 10 against Willis. Willis averaged 19 and 13. So, I mean, Willis has more historic finals moments. I mean, probably the most historic finals moment of all time. And he's not in, but this guy is. It just doesn't really make sense to me. And, I mean, same with McAdoo, And Bleacher Report, talking about his best season, in their quote, they say, his value to his team that year trailed only that of Bob McAdoo and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Which McAdoo's not on the list.
McAdoo won the MVP that year, by the way. So McAdoo's the MVP during his best year, but he's not on your fucking list.
What do you think? Do you think that there was multiple people doing this list, and that's why there's some pretty interesting inconsistencies?
I don't know. I don't know what to think with this list, but to leave out a 2-time champ, 3-time scoring champ, and a 5-time All-Star, just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. 56, Sidney Moncrief, big-time defender, 5 all-defensive NBA, 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards, which is impressive for sure. Career numbers are a little light, but his ultimate season is quite impressive. For me, he's on this list for his defense alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I still put him a little bit high, but he definitely makes my list. Just the 5 all-defense, 5 all-NBA, and 5 all-star. If you see the pattern there, he had a really great 5-year stretch, and in that stretch, he also had 2 Defensive Player of the Years. He's a little bit of a tweener in between a shooting guard and a point guard. He could also score, though. He also carried Arkansas to the Final Four in college, so he clearly showed up at every single level, and he was their all-time leading scorer. For people that think he's just a defensive maniac, I mean, he was their all-time scorer at Arkansas until Todd Day came in and jacked up 30 shots a game. So, I mean, the dude could play. Jerry West wanted to draft him, if that tells you anything. And imagine where we'd be placing him if he's on that Laker team.
Mm-hmm.
So, another thing to point out with that, I don't know if I put him over DJ, though. DJ has 9 all-defensive teams, 6 being on the first team compared to Sydney's 5. He just wasn't as consistent as DJ, Dennis Johnson, if you don't know. DJ's career totals also easily top Sidney Moncrief in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks, and games. So, I mean, he kind of owns them in all career totals. So I just don't put him over Dennis Johnson.
I don't either, to be honest with you. I don't either at all. Jerry Lucas, yes, and by numbers alone, amazing. To average 15 boards a season and 17 points per game puts him in a place I would have loved to seen like Wallace or Rodman get to. We've talked about that in the podcast before, where guys putting up great numbers, rebounding and blocks, but not with the points. He could score, like we just said. That's what separated the two. And if you want to listen to his ultimate season, which to me is insane, 21 points a game, 21 rebounds a game. That's kind of like Andre Drummond's numbers nowadays, but 4.5 assists. I mean, that's beyond solid, and he definitely makes my list for sure, and not just because he played for the Knicks.
Yeah, and Bleacher Report in their article on this pick, they kind of complain how misleading his rebound numbers were, but you don't hear them saying that about Will or Russell or some of these guys, but they just wanted to, point this out on Jerry Lucas for whatever reason. I'm not sure why.
Oh, that Elton Brand comparison, that I thought was hysterical.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, look, this guy shot 50%. That was pretty good for back then in his time period where you see all these guys shooting like under 40%. So he did shoot a high percentage, and he surpassed Wilt Chamberlain's high school totals and points, like shattered those, which I found amazing. So, I mean, the guy can play. Won a gold playing for the great Pete Newell in the Olympics. And, I mean, he thrived when Newell moved him to the center spot to his natural position. So, I don't know. I just like him. 2-time NCAA most outstanding player. He did it all levels, man. He's awesome.
54, Dennis Rodman, the worm. I think he was listening to this podcast, obviously, because I was just talking about him a second ago. I loved Rodman. I loved watching him because he was a master at getting under people's skin and basically taking almost their best players out of the game. I mean, I can remember just him giving Malone fits, Kemp, Shaq. There's a great YouTube. Just type in Rodman versus Shaq, and this guy breaks it down. And when you watch this guy's video, you're going to be amazed about how much Dennis Rodman really did shut Shaq down. And it's hard because sometimes you'll see numbers, but you got to remember, in the course of a game, Rodman is not going to guard Shaq the whole entire game. There's going to be other guys guarding him when Rodman's sitting on the bench, but they were showing when Rodman played and he actually guarded Shaq how much Shaq, and they're showing video evidence of this too, he was completely in Shaq's head, completely took Shaq out of his game. It was very, very impressive considering how high Shaq is on many people's lists on these 100 top players. Not really a shot blocker, which is interesting because of his lanky size and his, I thought he would be a better shot blocker than he was, but he really studied the game. He was really smart about trying to figure out where balls would bounce off of the rim and what direction they'd go in, which I thought was really interesting. He put up amazing rebound numbers. He could guard the 5, he could guard the 4, he could guard the 3. I mean, he could probably even guard the 2, depending on who it was. I think the off-the-court stuff hurts his status. 5 rings, if I'm correct, says a lot. But I think the over-the-top stuff, that he was doing, like marrying himself, things like that, I think that kind of hurt really his legacy in terms of what he really was. And what he really was an amazing defensive player that would grab you a ton of offensive rebounds. We've talked like this before. Offensive rebounds give you more possessions. They give you, second chance possessions. And to be honest with you, if you're in a close game, you want those offensive rebounds to have that extra touch, that extra opportunity to score. So Rodman would definitely make my list. I don't think I got him at 54, but he definitely makes my top 100.
Yeah, I like this placing a lot. I think you could even argue that you could put him in the top 50. And I know it's controversial with like how crazy he was, especially in that era. I mean, that wasn't really accepted for, him to have the piercings and the colored hair and to be so like openly and loving with like the gay community. I mean, he was very like open about being with them. It's just for whatever reason at that time it wasn't as accepted as it is today. But he was an incredible rebounder and defender. 7-time rebound leader, 8-time all defense, 5-time champ. And look, when you want to talk about the greatest rebounders of all time, I was just curious. I just wanted to see how great of a rebound Dennis Rodman really was. So I calculated Dennis Rodman's rebounding stats to Wilt Chamberlain's best rebounding season. And I just wanted to see what Rodman averaged during that season, if you wanted to go based off of, percentage-wise. In Rodman's season, he averaged 18.7 rebounds a game, 6.4 offensive rebounds, 12.3 defensive. His total rebounding percentage for the team was 26.2%, meaning he grabbed 26% of the team rebounds. So during Wilt's best season, the team averaged 71.4 possible rebounds a game. So just have a little fun with it. If you double those numbers, if you say the other team also averaged 71.4 possible rebounds a game, that makes it possible for 142 possible rebounds a game for both teams. Okay? So Rodman played 40 minutes a game that season, which makes it possible for him to grab almost 84% of the possible rebounds for the game. So this would make it possible for him to go after 120 rebounds. So with Rodman's total rebounding percentage being 26%, and you multiply 0.262 times, 119.9, it comes out to 31.4 rebounds. That's incredible. Like, that would be his average in Wilt Chamberlain's rebounding season if those percentages added up. And look, I'm not saying that's what he would have averaged, but I mean, that's the ballpark that we're looking at for rebounds in a season if you want to compare him to Wilt Chamberlain. And that was the best rebounding season of all time.
Could you imagine the two of them going at it?
Yeah.
Right?
I would pay so much money to see Dennis Rodman wrestle Chamberlain, who a lot of people think is like the strongest dude of all time. He's basically like Hercules.
Right.
I would love to see those two wrestle.
Oh my God.
And I don't mean like Karl Malone and Rodman WWE wrestling. I mean like basketball wrestling.
Right. Oh, they would be. We talked about this. Text one day. We were talking about what a trip it would have been, like social media. Like, imagine like if Wilt had like an Instagram page, or
yeah.
I think about wow, what would Rodman have been like in that era? Oh my God.
Well, you should see his Instagram in today's era, right now. It's still crazy.
He's a nut. But he definitely belongs on the list. And you're right. I never thought about the gay community and how open and accepting he was. It wasn't. Let's be real. In sports, it's not accepted as much, which is a shame because it doesn't mean anything. It's just, who cares what you are? It's
exactly.
that's a shame about that. But you're right. And later in the podcast, when we get down to the Karl Malone, I have such a disdain for Karl Malone for basically ending Magic Johnson's career because he was so scared and uneducated about how you can get AIDS, and he really pretty much pushed Magic Johnson out when Magic probably had a good 3 or 4 like prime years, before he came back in 96. Right. It's a shame, and I think Rodman definitely broke down some walls, which I think is awesome. Okay, 53, Artist Gilmore. This is where Bleacher Report puzzles me. They have a nice little run, and then they start talking to Gilmore like he slept with one of their girlfriends. They say how his ABA days don't count on his resume, which I go, huh? He averaged 22 points and 17 boards, by the way, in the ABA. And then he said he never emerged as an all-time great, but then he said for a 5-year period between 1980 and 1985, he averaged between 19 and 15 a game and 10 and 12 boards a game. Those numbers are pretty good to me, in my opinion. You do some digging on you dig deeper on his career, and you start to realize he actually had a decent, solid career, 11-time All-Star between both leagues. So that was one that really puzzled me in terms of what they were talking about and how the numbers didn't add up to the way they were talking, like he wasn't important. Right.
And he dominated both leagues for at least a short period of time. Like, he proved he could play in both the ABA and the NBA. He's an ABA champ. Even in college, he took Jacksonville. He took Jacksonville to the NCAA championship against UCLA that had Sidney Wicks, Henry Bibby, Curtis Rowe, John Valley. That was an amazing UCLA team. And they didn't beat them, but the fact that he's playing in that game against them with Jacksonville, and he remains the only player, he's the only player in college to have a 20-20 game, 20 points, 20 rebounds. He's 1 in 5. So he's an incredible player. I don't know where you place him based off of what your criteria is. I like it. I think it's a good placement, maybe a little bit high, but I think he's definitely on the list, in between 50, 65, anywhere from there.
Yeah. 52, James Worthy. The glue of those championship Laker teams in the 80s, in my opinion, were so solid. I still can picture him running the floor with Magic on those fast breaks in the 80s. You really missed out if you didn't get a chance to watch those Lakers Celtic games. But I think thanks to YouTube, you probably can watch them and do some research. 6'9" forward moving like that, you have to realize nowadays the NBA is a little different. Players are bigger and stronger, but back then there was not a lot of guys that were 6'9" that were moving like that. And there's two on that team. He definitely makes this list for me. I just don't know where I put him. I mean, I feel like he needs to be a little bit higher personally, but we're getting to really good players now, so it's kind of tough. One thing off topic too, I really wish Bleacher Report would have added the height and the weight to each player, especially the height. I think that was something they really missed out on. I know they add the position, which is great, but I started doing a lot more research as I started going further into this list, and I was definitely not using Bleacher Report's, their numbers other than just the actual number of where they put the player.
Yeah, and just a side note for, if you guys wish that you could see the same thing as far as height and weight, we'll have this on our YouTube page as well with highlights and pictures. We'll have height and weight and stats posted on that as well as players come up, so you can kind of follow. It might be a little easier to follow along. But I'm okay with this pick. I'm kind of on the other side of the stick with you on this, though. I think it's a bit high. 7-time All-Star, 3-time champ. I know he's got the Finals MVP, which makes it okay to put him this high. He's also College Player of the Year and an NCAA champ with Michael Jordan, and the tournament's most outstanding player with Jordan on the team, I might add. But you forget he's the number 1 overall pick, and when you have a number 1 overall pick, for whatever reason, it almost, as crazy as it sounds, it just feels like James Worthy didn't live up to the number 1 pick hype. I think it's just from playing with Magic and Kareem. There's just something in me where I'm just like, he was the number 1 pick.
Yeah, what's funny is, and I don't think of that either. And a lot of times it doesn't matter where you are in the sense that way, but you are right though. I mean, if you're the number 1 pick, you're supposed to, in my opinion, I don't want to say act like it sounds stupid to say that, but there's much more
pressure to be the guy.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Now, are you saying this because you wore purple and gold?
No, I mean, I'll put it this way. He's definitely on my all-time underrated list for sure. But I don't know. It's like he doesn't have the it factor that most number 1 picks have. So
no, I totally agree with you. I think if you talk to 10 people, if we went to morning ball and we're like, hey, where did James Worthy get picked?
Yeah.
Right? I bet you maybe not even a single person would say number 1.
And I bet nobody realizes that he was the most outstanding player over Michael Jordan when they're on the same team. It's like he was an incredible player.
Well, you know what, though? I believe that in a way because Jordan didn't really become Jordan until he got to the NBA.
Nobody did hit the game-winning shot to win the title.
Yep.
So it's like a lot of people still have that image. He was the guy. It's like, no, he wasn't.
He wasn't.
Dean Smith only got to hold him under 20.
Yeah. You're totally right on that. Okay, so 51 is Rick Barry, right?
Yeah.
And I learned something from you today, but I always think when I think underhanded foul shots, I always think Rick Barry. But like you said earlier in the podcast, he was not the guy that invented that shot. To me, Rick Barry really did it all. I think the only thing that hurt him, red flag for me, is how many different teams he played for. And you can tell when he was an announcer, you can tell he kind of had, I'm not going to mince words, a shit attitude. You know what I mean? He just seemed like...
He's an asshole.
Good Lord. Yeah, exactly. And I think probably that's what kind of hurt him. Because I was saying maybe he was a headache in the locker room. And he probably was, he was a headache in real life.
Yeah.
NBA champ, ABA champ, 8-time All-Star, 5-time All-First NBA, Rookie of the Year, scoring champ. I mean, that's enough criteria for me to easily put this guy in this, in the top 100. And 51 seems like a good number. You can go a little bit higher, I would think, maybe with him. But yeah, that's easily makes the list.
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit too low. I'd for sure have him in my top 50. He'd definitely be in my top 5 assholes of all time. And I had the chance to meet him actually, and he was a dick then. I still got my autograph, so that's fine.
How old were you?
I was 12 years old.
Really?
Yeah, I was 12 years old.
Why do you got to be a dick to a 12-year-old? You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
I don't even understand that.
But in all seriousness, that's the kind of attitude that made him so great, though. I mean, he was just such a fierce competitor, and I mean, he was a dick on the court. He really was. In the 12 All-Stars, Rookie of the Year, the Finals MVP. He's got a championship with the Warriors. He went up against Elvin Hayes, Wes Unseld, and Shanier and Kevin Porter. That was a great Bullets team that they beat. He's a scoring champ. The underhanded free throw shooting like 90%. I mean,
he was a 50, 40, 90 guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, I believe he was. I don't have that stat in front of me, but I think he.
I'm almost positive he was. Yeah.
And he averaged 37 in college, at Miami, and he's the only player in NBA history to lead the NCAA, ABA, and NBA in scoring, which I think is pretty damn impressive.
Well, it shows you can do it at every level.
Yeah, I mean, he no matter what level it is, he's going to kick your ass.
Yeah, and tell you about it, especially if you're 12. Okay, here's where I've had a couple moments with this list where I have literally said stuff out loud when I'm just doing all my research at home, and I'll come up to somebody and I'll go, "Fucking really?" and this is a fucking really moment. Dwight Howard at 50.
Yeah.
Dwight Howard at 50. you no Willis Reed, no Alonzo Mourning, no Bob McAdoo, but Dwight Howard at 50. And I put in my notes I was going to do my best Stephen A. Smith right here. Dwight Howard, please. The man does not belong on this list. Where's my cheese doodles?
That's so much better than your Mutombo one, though.
Thank you very much. Quite frankly. But it's ridiculous. I mean, you look at his current numbers and you go, okay, he's where he should be number-wise. But he hasn't really done anything of substance in years. I mean, the guy, yes, the whole Superman nonsense and the dunk contest. And early in his career, he looked like, he's like the Tarzan Jane thing. You ever heard that? Where you look like Tarzan, play like Jane. Yeah. He looked in the beginning like he was going to be like that next new level, NBA center. But I really didn't feel like he's still playing. I mean, I think he's going to contribute well to the Lakers this season. I really do in that sense. He's going to give AD some, time to, and if they play him together in stretches, I think he's going to help him in that way. But, I'm sorry, not even close.
Dude, he's got to make up a Shaq and wear icy hot for like the next 6 years and win like 4 titles if he's going to end up at number 50.
I don't even get it.
It's just so high. Like, what the hell? I mean, I know he's got the 3 Defensive Player of the Years, but I mean, you got him over Ben Wallace, like really, or Alonzo Mourning. Even Bill Walton with the title and Finals MVP. Dwight Howard doesn't have a title. Like, if you're going to be that controversial of a player, because he is, even today.
Absolutely.
Like, today, people are asking, do we really want to sign Dwight Howard? But if you're that controversial, you got to have at least a title if you're going to be in the top 50.
I agree. I completely agree.
Yeah, and I mean, his career is essentially over at like age 28 when he went to Houston, and I mean, after that, he's just bounced around the league. He's been hurt. He's extremely toxic to locker rooms, and he hasn't been healthy since like age 26. I'd love to see how many games he's actually played in since then.
Now, here's what's interesting about this. Okay, we both watched Dwight Howard, right? We're old enough to be able to watch Dwight Howard's career, right? If you look at just stats alone, and this is why the eye test to me is so important, 18 points per game, 12.8 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1.0 steals, 2.1 blocks for his career. Those are impressive numbers if you're just looking at that going, oh, that's pretty solid. You look at his ultimate season, 22.9 points, 14.5 rebounds, 2.9 blocks. I mean, that's impressive to a degree. But if you actually watch Dwight Howard play, to me, it's going to sound bad to say this, but I think he lacks that heart type of instinct. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like that's why I feel about him. It's like it's almost like the guy that's 7 feet that can just play because he's 7 foot, but doesn't realize like you got to keep getting better, or there's going to be another 7 footer that's going to come out there. It's just going to kick your ass. And I feel like it's like, oh, okay, oh well.
He's been the exact same since the entered the league. Like, he doesn't have a dream shake. He doesn't really have a jump hook. Like, he doesn't have a post move that he can remember. And did you know his middle name's David? Like, he can't be in the top with the middle name Dwight David. No.
How many teams has he played with? Like, I mean, just in like the last 5 years, do you think?
Yeah, so
4?
There's the Hornets, the Wizards, the Lakers, the Rockets.
Right, and he played with somebody else. Didn't he get traded mid-season?
I think he got traded to Memphis, and they waived him. I don't think he actually played with them. So at least 5.
That shows you right there. I mean, if you're getting traded between 5 teams in pretty much 4 or 5 years, there's it's like NFL quarterbacks where you got like a first round guy and he just didn't develop, so that you trade him to another team and he doesn't do it there. Those guys get like 3 or 4 chances in the NFL because they still see that potential, big arms, this and that. He kind of reminds me of that, like a Rick Meyer or some of these quarterbacks that bounced around and they're just not good.
Really?
And he's good. He's good. Look, you don't go into the NBA and put up those, because like we can say, to get back to my Stephen A. real quick, Kwame Brown, you are a bona fide scrub, Kwame Brown, right? Kwame Brown, number 1 pick, right?
Yeah.
He had the intangibles, but he could never put it together. Dwight had put together some really good seasons in the sense, so he's not like a scrub. He's just, like you said, he hasn't grown in God knows how many years.
Yeah. Let me ask you, though, does he make your top 100, though? Because that's how bad this is.
No.
He's a 50.
No, he doesn't.
He's really questionable.
He doesn't make my top 100.
Like, he might with the Defensive Player of the Year awards, but, like, that's a big maybe.
He doesn't, though, because he doesn't pass my eye test at all.
Yeah,
he really doesn't.
And he doesn't make people better,
No, he doesn't. He really doesn't. No, he doesn't make my top 100, especially if you look at their top 100 and some of the centers they leave off. No, I don't.
What if he wins a title with LA?
It depends on how he plays in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So let's say for example, like LA, and who knows who they're going to play, right? But let's say he gets 25 minutes a game, right? But let's say he's playing alongside of AD, and let's say he's doing the dirty work, like he's blocking some shots, he's grabbing some boards. Like let's say he goes 14 points, 8 boards, and like a block and a half a game in the playoffs.
So he contributes, get a title, and he might.
But like legitimately contributes, not like getting like playing 12 minutes a game.
Like Mitch Richmond minutes.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. Like he's actually playing. I still can't, because I just know the guy. He just doesn't have that. I mean, I remember Eddie Curry outplaying him one game when Curry was on the Knicks.
That's all bad.
No, I'm dead serious, too. I remember that and just going, because Curry had his moments, you want to talk about over underrated. There's times Curry actually played well. It's just Curry's head, he was such a head case, he couldn't get it together. But that's what I kind of think about Dwight Howard, too.
Yeah.
Like, you remember how enormously popular he was?
Yes.
In the early 2000s with the whole dunk contest with him and Nate Robinson and like the McDonald's commercials. I mean, he was popular, and then he just went like cuckoo and flew off the deep end, and then he was never the same.
And just to wrap this Dwight Howard thing up, if he gets a title, I think he's going to be in my top 100. I'll give him a chance to bounce back, but I'm with you. He's got to contribute.
We're going to put him at like
15, 20 minutes a game.
95, 90
yeah,
in
like
there.
85 to 100.
Okay.
Yeah.
49 is all you.
All right, Paul Arizin. I love Paul Arizin. Little high. He should have won more. He's one of those guys where Bill Russell just ruined so many legacies, kind of like Jordan did. 10-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA, 2-time scoring champ. He's an NBA champ. He left 2 years in the military in the middle of his career, which I found interesting, and he came back and like just didn't miss a beat. His numbers were like pretty identical to before, so I think it takes a lot of mental toughness to go to the military, come back, and still like dominate the league. And led the nation in scoring in college. I don't know. I like him. I just don't like him in the top 50. He had good teammates like Chamberlain and Tom Gola, Tom Masheri, and they just couldn't get the job done. And Guy Rogers. So to me, with all that talent, and you can't get by Russell more than once, I just can't put him in my top 50.
Gotcha. 48, Adrian Dantley. Pure scorer like Dominique, in my opinion. Best success was with Utah. Unfortunately, just was missing titles. He was on the Lakers, and then he gets off the Lakers, goes to Utah, so he misses Showtime. He misses the titles in L.A., and then he's on those Pistons teams, and then he gets traded for, I believe it was Mark Aguirre. So then he misses the Pistons titles. Good rebounder for a small forward. Very efficient scorer in multiple ways. Great foul shooter, too. He definitely belongs on my list for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely on my list. And look, there's no bigger fan than Adrian Dantley than me. That's where I got my scoop shot that you're talking about. In our last podcast. So I studied Adrian Dantley growing up. I've watched so much Dantley. He was one of my top 5 favorite players, and he's such an undersized player, like in the post. He's more of like a wing, but he had all those scoop shots. I mean, he was brilliant, and he had one leg longer than the other, so you're like ran kind of funny, and still just like dominated dudes that were like 5 or 6 inches taller than him. I think he would have been much better in this era. The way he's able to draw fouls on his jump shot, like he would have just lived at the foul line, and he did in his era. But 2-time scoring champ, just his personality sucked. He didn't win. Like it did. He just never won. And to have him over a guy I haven't seen on this list yet, we did see Dominique. Dominique's on this list, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I mean, Dominique averaged 23 compared to his 15.
Dominique's actually ahead of him.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Dominique's at 43.
That makes sense then. Okay, yeah. I'm good with that then.
Yeah.
But he's not top 50.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that. One of the things I love about doing this is putting in the work and doing some of the research. And one of the things that blew me away about number 47, which is Wes Unseld, is he's only 6'7".
Yeah.
Playing center at 6'7", and he's putting up those numbers. 14-point career board average at 6'7". Like Will, Russell, Kareem. I mean, that's insane to put those numbers up. Not the biggest scorer though, and I think that hurts him a little bit. But he could score when he needed to early in his career, which I noticed. To only average 10.8 points a game. Not a shot blocker either, but at 6'7", who shot through your block, and it's hard to block a guy that's 7 foot when you're 6'7", right?
Yeah.
His ultimate season: 16.2 points, 18.2 rebounds, 5 assists, which is, I think, but yet again, he's 6'7", so he's not like a 7-footer with 5 assists. But I think those are really solid numbers. Almost 2 steals a game for his ultimate season. He definitely belongs on the list. I don't. He's one of those guys that I have to scratch my head about. Do I put him at 47? Do I put him at 57?
Yeah.
Do I? You know what I mean?
Yeah. The wide U is what they called him, the wide U. And I've watched a lot of Wes Unseld. My dad loved him, so I got to see a lot of Wes growing up. But he was just so boring to me. I just didn't really enjoy watching them. So I might be. I'm doing everything I can to not let those feelings get in the way, but I just don't think he's any more impressive than Willis Reed, and Willis Reed's not on this list.
Not on the list. Yeah.
Like I would have Willis Reed over Wes Unseld.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's a rebounding champ. He's got the finals MVP in that championship. But man, I'm just looking at him compared to Willis Reed. I'm not going to compare it. I've done enough Willis Reed comparisons, but I mean, there's no way he's above Willis Reed. The only thing I'm going to compare is their numbers against each other. And Willis Reed averaged 18 points, 12 rebounds, and 2 assists and a block against Wes. And he's 17-9 against Wes. And I don't know. With Wes averaging 10 points, 14 boards, and just under 4 assists when he's known for being a passing big man for the outlet pass, like, I don't know. I don't put him ahead of that, and same with McAdoo. I just don't.
No, I'm with you. We're really on the same page on a lot of this stuff. 46. Here's an interesting one. Here's such an interesting one, and I think it's also because of like social media and like TV commercials and other stuff. But Chris Paul, 46. Obviously, Chris Paul's a great point guard, but in my opinion, he's a great point guard who can't win when it counts. The trade that didn't happen to the Lakers though might have changed that. Because if he goes to those Laker teams when he did, I think he gets some rings easily. He's a great defender. I think he's probably one of the better defensive point guards in a while, to be honest with you. He's got a ton of awards and belongs on this list. In my opinion, just not top 50. I don't know. He just sours me just with his attitude and just he should be better than he is. And I don't know why. He's definitely breaking down a bit too, you know what I mean? And now he's in no man's land, and he's in is he in OKC or is he in Charlotte?
He's in OKC.
He's in OKC, right? Yeah. I don't know. He would make my list for sure, but I don't know. I don't think at 46. I'm
with you. 46 is way too high. And before I even get into this, did I read this correctly by Bleacher Report? Does it say he suffered his fair share of boners?
What?
That's what it says. And
no, please don't tell me.
I swear to God.
Please don't tell me.
It says, I quote, he suffered his fair share of boners.
Oh my God, where is that? Why can't I see that right now?
I mean, just keep reading. You'll find it.
All right,
well, yeah.
I'm reading while you're talking right now. I have to see that.
Yeah, it's magical.
Yeah. He missed some big shots and he suffered his fair share of boners.
Yeah.
It's like they're talking like he's in like 8th grade.
Yeah, like I promise you, I stopped reading about most of these guys, and it came to Chris Paul, and I just saw the word boner. It's like, whoa, wait,
That's
what?
amazing.
And I think they're referring to him like punching dudes in the balls. I'm not really sure, but
So
I don't know. Take that as you will, our listeners. But he's great. Like, to be a 6-time steals leader, I find impressive. Leading the league in assists 4 times, but he's got to win for me, and he's never played a full 82 game, or he only played 1 full 82 game season. But I mean, he's very injury prone, and he breaks down. Like you said, he's starting to break down. He's been breaking down.
Yeah, you're correct on that.
And I mean, he does have the gold medals in Beijing and London.
Sure.
But and the one thing I do see when you look outside of what he's done for basketball, he transformed the Clippers and made New Orleans popular in a small market.
Yep.
Made the OKC Hornets, when they moved, popular. So I got to give him that. So he does have that. He's done a lot for the small markets in the NBA.
No, he is, and there's definitely something to be said for that. For sure. 45.
Oh, you're gonna love this one.
Oh, folks. I've said it before on the
Knick
podcast.
fans, cover your ears.
I am such a huge Knick fan. I will never forget. I will do an imitation of my dad. He's watching the game in Vegas. I'm watching the game on TV in Reno. And when Miller had his, amazing performance where he scored, was it 8 points and what was it? 7.2, 11 second, whatever the fuck it was. I just remember my dad calls and he goes, "What the fuck is going on?" my dad, he had season tickets to the Knicks in the early 70s. So he saw some of those great teams. And I hate Miller. But you know what, though? He's one of those guys you love to hate, okay? He's a big-time guy when the lights were the brightest. Definitely. Marksman for sure. Probably one of the best shooters after Bird retired in terms of not the new school shooters nowadays. But he was so clutch. Deadly from 3. He absolutely belongs on this list. Best player on those Pacer teams, in my opinion. One thing I didn't like, super low assists for a shooting guard. His assists, he did not pass quite a bit. I remember him being a better defender, too, than what he got credit for. I really do. I mean, I've seen enough of the Knicks Pacer series and whatnot, but I remember him being a better defender, but the numbers don't show it. But, I mean, maybe it's just because some of the guards that he's going against, like Jordan, I mean, Gary Payton, those guys are going to place on those lists.
For sure.
And he's going to be odd man out, but yeah, Reggie Miller, I can't stand you. You got big ass ears. You look like Dumbo. I hate you. I hate you so much. But
all right, that's
I'll give you
hey.
credit. Credit is due, Miller. You were definitely on my top 100 list for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if I have him as high as 45 though. I think it might just be slightly high. I kind of have him on the outside looking into my top 50 or just barely cracking like right at 50. I'm not mad at it though. His clutch moments are probably in my top 5 of all time.
Oh, hands down.
I mean, like you said, when the lights are bright, that's when he shine the brightest, and especially against your Knicks in Madison Square Garden, and that's not an easy place to do.
Nope.
He's extremely consistent, absolute killer. He's got to be the best trash talker of all time. I mean, he's up there.
No way. Jordan. Jordan.
Yeah, I'll give you. He's in the top 5.
Oh,
he's top 5.
Yeah, because you can't put him over Bird either.
No, you can't.
See,
they're all different, and we'll have another podcast.
Please,
about that.
we have to.
They're all different.
We have to.
They all different in so many different ways. But Reggie was a 3-time NBA All-Star. I guarantee he'd have more All-Star appearances if he played for a big market.
I'd agree with that for sure.
Playing in Indiana, especially in those early years. 40, 50, 90 club, got the gold medal. He's led the Pacers to their only finals appearances. And then he's second all-time in scoring at UCLA behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So that dude was lighting it up at other levels too. the 8 points in 9 seconds, Knicks choke game. You know, he made Spike Lee famous. I mean, he's got to move up a couple spots just for that. So.
I loved how the Knicks fans would yell Cheryl. Yeah. That always made me laugh.
I don't know if I put him over Rick Barry, though, but he's a great player, man.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think he does belong right around that 50, 49, 52, right outside looking in for sure. Maybe the lack of a title hurts him there. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. He gets the title, especially in a smaller market, you know, because those Indiana teams, they were like the best role players on those teams, really, but not. Yeah. They weren't built, and they gave Jordan fits in that. You know, they did give that Bulls team. Yeah. You know, it wasn't like they just got swept. I mean, they gave Chicago something.
Yeah, and
for
Reggie
sure.
pushed Jordan on his ass and hit that game winner. But the one thing, I kind of wish Reggie did it. I'm glad he didn't, because I'm glad he did it with one team. Like, I respect that about him.
I do too.
But he had a chance to join the Celtics when they just got Garnett, Pierce, and Allen.
Oh, wow.
Because he had just retired, and they begged him to come back, and he thought about it. He's working out. Last minute didn't. And if he just got that damn ring, he would be in this top 50.
You know what? I cannot agree with you more on that, for sure, as much as I can't stand him. Anyway. Ray Allen is at 44. To me, Ray Allen's underrated. And we might argue about this, but I think he's underrated. I think he's an amazing shooter. I'm glad to see he finally got some hardware. I feel like the trade that got him to Boston was a fleece job by Boston. Do you know what that trade was? It was Delonte West, Wally Zerbiak.
Jeff Green.
Yeah. For Big Baby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's an insane trade. He was great in Milwaukee. He was great in Seattle. He's a solid 20-ish and 5-5 until he went to Boston and Miami, where he took those different roles, you know. Yeah. Solid 3-point shooter. And me, like on both of those teams, he's the number 3 option. But you know, if you're kicking into that corner and you're going to him, you know he's going to put that shot down. And I think that's valuable, especially when you have all these like super team things now. You got to have the corner 3 guy. Yeah. You have to. I mean, you have to have the guy that can take over the game. You have to have the guy that can get into the paint. But you got to have your corner 3 guy. And I don't think there's a better corner 3 guy than Ray Allen when Ray Allen was in his prime.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I could go either way with putting Ray or Reggie in whatever order. I mean, they are so identical. And they both made Spike Lee famous. Ray was Jesus Shuttlesworth, and Reggie gave him the choke sign.
That's true. That's true.
It's amazing how similar they are. And when you look at the numbers, like Ray and Reggie both played 18 seasons. Reggie 15 playoffs, Ray 11. Reggie 5 All-Stars, Ray 10. And Reggie's in the small market in the Jordan era. Reggie 3 All-NBA, Ray 2. They both averaged 18 points, both 3 assists, exactly 1.1 steals, and exactly 0.2 blocks for the season. Freakishly similar throughout their career.
Wow.
And then also for totals, in career totals, keep in mind Reggie Miller shot so many of these off balance threes, whereas Ray didn't. But Reggie has 25,279 points. Ray just 24,500. They both have 1,000, or Ray has 1,000 more rebounds. Reggie 100 more steals, 55 more blocks, only 89 more games played. Reggie 47% from the field, Ray 45, both right at 40 for 3, both at 89 for free throws. It's like these are like creepily identical.
Yeah.
Like, how do you pick one over the other? And so for me, it's like playoffs. Who showed up. And I just think Ray had so many no-shows in the playoffs, like so many of the slumps with the Celtics, and Reggie was always showing up.
You're right, but Reggie had to show up.
Yeah.
That's the difference. When you think about it, like Ray didn't have to show up because of the people he had around him as much as Reggie had to show up.
Right.
Because like we're going to have Haywood Workman show up. You know what I mean? Like, like our buddy Defla Shrimp, like there's certain guys where it's like, like if you're the guy on that team, you're the guy on that team. You got to show up.
So, quick question.
Sure.
Because this is interesting. Who do you build a team around, Reggie or Ray?
I would definitely say Reggie.
Yeah, and I would too. And
I would.
It's like,
and that's where you put Reggie over Ray.
Yeah.
Because we're not Bleacher Report either. That's why I do that too. Dominique Wilkins, 43. Neek. I loved him when I was a kid. Man, this guy could score and soar. Like, that's my really bad Clyde Frazier impersonation. The Bird.
That's Bill Wallace.
That's awesome. The Bird playoff game is enough to get him in.
Yeah.
I know you had to have seen that, or at least the highlights. Good Lord. I mean, there was a point in the third quarter. It was just back, forth, back, forth, back, forth. It was almost like you were watching a one-on-one game.
Yeah.
Full court.
You're
essentially.
right.
I mean, that was just insane.
And the Hawks bench is cheering for Bird. And it's just,
dude,
I had to throw that in there.
It's perfect. It's perfect 80s basketball. It really is.
Yeah, that was a shootout.
To me, it was like a 12-round prize fight. You know, the dunk contest with Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
Legendary. Here's something interesting I found out when I was researching Wilkins. I knew he wasn't a passer at all, right? But I was super surprised by his rebounding average. High sixes, low sevens most of his career. And then he had a 9-board average in 1990.
Wow.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
He bounced around towards the end, which was kind of a bummer. I know he was playing on that Spurs team. I believe he was playing on the Spurs team when they didn't have Duncan, and Robinson was injured because the Spurs were like atrocious, and that's how they got the first pick, and they got Duncan. Like, they were really bad that year, and he was the guy that was scoring like 16, 17 a game for the Spurs back then. That, I also believe, was before Popovich was the coach. And I cannot remember the guy that was coaching before Popovich because he's made such a mark. Was it Bob?
Was it Mo or Bob Wise? Or I'm not sure, but that's either Popovich's first year. He's an executive and then moved into coach.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
He was, right. Because they had some interesting coaches before him, right?
Yeah.
They had Tartanian, right?
Yeah. They had the Shark. They had Tart the Shark.
Yeah, they tried to bring Lolly Daniels in. Good Lord. But yeah, Neek was amazing. You know, like I said, he got a bad rap for being like, you know, remember the human highlight reel, but he got a bad rap for the black hole, basically. The ball going in and coming back out.
Yeah.
But I love this play. I definitely think he should be top 50. And I think he was top 50 in that NBA's 1996, the original top 50 they did, which we're definitely doing a podcast on.
For sure. No, he belongs here. I'm good with it. I might have just a few guys over him just because of like titles and hardware and stuff, but I mean, for people to say Dominique didn't win, he just didn't have a lot of help. I mean, Spud Webb like really wasn't that great.
Tree Rollins, Kevin Willis.
Yeah, like they were fun. They were cool, but I mean, he didn't have like another superstar around him. And like, you know, when he went over to Europe, he won a title over there.
Yep.
Like he won in Europe right away, and he was the MVP and the leading scorer of that. So it's not like he's just some scrub, you know, just trying to make some extra cash. Like, I mean, he torched dudes over there, got a title, and I mean, he earned that one too. He was emotional about that, but just when he went head to head with like Bird, Dr. J, Jordan, Alex English, Thomas, Drexler, Barkley, I won't go through all the stats, even though I have him here, but he's outscoring all of them except for Jordan.
Yeah.
You know, and he's right there with Jordan. I mean, he is really taking it
inside, outside. It didn't matter. I mean, he could score from pretty much. He was like a Bernard King in a way. You know what I mean? Just more athletic. I mean, to be honest with you. 42. This is an interesting one for me. So Kevin Garnett's 42. I think he's a player. If I did this list in 2025, he's going to be higher on this list. Especially if he didn't have that really bad injury last year. And I think that's where there's a question mark for me because, and I sent you that article where most people that have the really bad injuries don't come back from them even remotely the same.
Right.
And that's what, and like I said, the doctors and everything is better nowadays in terms of rehabbing, but he can be 34 when he plays again,
yeah,
right?
He's 33, 34.
Yeah, 34 when he plays again. I don't think he'll play the same. I could be completely wrong. To me, he might be one of the best big man shooters of all time. Yeah. I mean, he's insane. And I mean, and you're talking hand in the face shooting too. He's just not afraid to take the last shot. Amazing moves to the hoop. The rebound is a little light for my taste, you know. Especially at his height, to be honest with you.
It's hard to rebound when everybody on your team shoots like 50% from three, though.
And when you're playing outside a lot, too. It's the new NBA. I mean, he's definitely outside a lot more.
Kind of joking, but yeah.
No, but you're right that one away, to be honest with you. I don't think the Warriors win any more titles if he doesn't come over. I really don't. I mean, I think he was we need you to go up against LeBron.
Yeah.
I really believe that. he's one of those guys. Like I said, if he comes back from that injury, has a couple more really solid seasons, I could easily put him in my top 30.
Yeah, and I hate seeing guys injured. I hope he comes back, 100%. I just don't see it happening at this age. It's different, and
That's why I don't give him the max, right? That's why I was happy with everybody making fun of the Knicks. Like, how do you give that guy the max contract to sit out for a year and he's 34 when he comes back?
Putting that aside, like, the way he got his rings, like, it just doesn't sit well with me. And I know a lot of people, some people think it's fine. I'm old school. I just don't. They lost to Game 7 to the Warriors, and a large part of that was because of Durant when he's on the Thunder. And then you're going to go join them. It just didn't sit well with me. I think 42 is a good spot for him. I know a lot of people would have him higher. He definitely deserves to be here. He's an incredible player, but I'll say it this way. If he wins one with Brooklyn, I got to put him really high, like top 20, I think, maybe even top 15.
Well, it's a good thing he's not going to win one from Brooklyn. So.
I agree, but I'll say this. If he gets one anywhere else that he's like the guy, I think I would put him in the top 20.
This is our last one for our podcast right now. It's number 41. It's Elvin Hayes. He passes the career 2010 average, so he's in for me no matter what. Great defender who can also score. Had a championship and led the league in scoring as a rookie, which no one has done since, by the way. Attitude issues hurt his career. He belongs on this list for sure. Like I said earlier, I just don't know where I'd put him.
Yeah. It's a good placement, I think, personally. I mean, he's got 12 All-Stars, 6 All-NBAs. Like, he showed up.
Oh, absolutely.
And scoring champ and 2-time rebounding champ. His attitude was definitely in question always. But I think a lot of it had to do in college, honestly, because he had a historic college career in the first nationally televised college game. Hayes scores 39 points, has 15 rebounds, and they upset UCLA, so like
which is huge.
Yeah, it's huge. Alcindor's on that team, and so he was very hyped up in college. And then when that rematch happened in the tournament, John Wooden triangled to him, and Hayes had an atrocious game. He had 10 points, and they lost by 40, and that just like completely shattered him. He's one of those guys that kind of like locked himself in a room and just didn't talk to the media for I think like a full year or two.
Wow.
And I think that's when like all those personality and locker room issues like really started to happen. That game really like messed with him.
Yeah.
But like from a talent standpoint, you can say he's a locker room issue, but like he's easily a top 40 talent. So this might be even a little bit low.
Interesting. Guys, thanks so much for listening to our podcast. I hope you had a lot of fun. I know me and Zach are having a blast doing this stuff. Please subscribe if you would. That'd be amazing. And go through and look for the next one because it's going to put up in a couple days. And hopefully you agree or disagree. And whatever you do, send us an email. Talk on social media about it. We'd love to hear your takes and where you think people should be. So for Zach, this is Eric, and we'll catch you again soon.